Welcome to the Worldwide Robotic Milking Podcast with Gareth Jones of Robotic Milking Systems and John Gerbitz of Cow Corner Consulting. This is the international podcast dedicated exclusively to robotic milking topics from planning through production.
Hi, my name's Gareth Jones from Robotic Milking Systems in the UK.
And I'm John Gerbitz from Cow Corner Consulting in the US.
And this is our podcast, Worldwide Robotic Milking. John, good to see you again. I see it looks like the sun's shining over there today.
It's actually, we're a little bit cloudy today. We were supposed to have sunshine. It was supposed to be a beautiful day, and now it looks like we've got some thunderstorms rolling in today. We've had a couple of weeks of thunderstorms and hail and tornadoes and all kinds of that stuff going on.
Okay.
So hoping the better weather is better where you are.
Yeah, we've had 10 really lovely days, and yeah, definitely feels like summer's pretty much here now. We're talking here at the end of April, so yeah, much needed.
Good. And so you've done some traveling lately. You went to Denmark to visit some farms and learn more about batch milking. And I'm anxious to hear about that trip. How many farms did you get to visit?
Yeah, I went the week before last, John. I understood as we both do, understood the principle behind batch milking, but I was really keen to get on some farms just to look at the sort of finer detail and to see exactly what was happening. So de Laval very offered to take me over there and to have a look. So yeah, went to 3 farms. Started off in the north. The first one we went to had been up and running for 2 years. That was a 14 robot operation. And then we went on to the second one that day, which was still in the building process, but nearly completed. So it was interesting to get the farmers' thoughts on why he'd gone down that route. And that'll be an 18 robot operation. And then on the last day, we went right down south to visit a farm that's been up and running for 3 years with 1,100 Jersey cows being milked on 24 robots and moving up his numbers up to around about 1,400. So yeah, by the time I'd got around all 3, I got a very clear idea of exactly how these systems work.
So before we get too far into this, probably should back up a step and talk about what batch milking is. You mentioned earlier, and I mentioned I'm familiar with it, I'm aware of it, but I haven't been on a farm as you have. And so what are we talking about when we say batch milking?
I think that the sort of easiest way to get this across to anybody is it's conventional milking with all the management systems, cow management systems that are in place for conventional milking by and large, but using a bank of robots to milk your cows. So rather than having a conventional parlor, we're bringing the cows to a bank of robots to get milked. So the bank of robots is replacing a big herringbone parlor, rotary parlor. We are talking about our housing, our feeding, our slurry management, our bedding the cows down. It can all continue as it would on a conventional milking system. I think that's the simplest way of explaining it.
So when we talk about robots, the first thing that people usually want to talk about is labor. So what did you see in terms of labor on these farms, and how much labor are they really saving with batch milking?
Normally the initial conversation for going down robots, the sort of catalyst, is lack of labor or lack of decent labor, and be able to get reliable labor. So with voluntary milking, really you don't need labor at night. Cows bring themselves to the robots. With batch milking, you do need labor because cows need to be brought to the robots, but you need a lot less of it. So what I saw on these farms was you group your cows according to your numbers into groups that can get through the robots in about an hour. So the first farm we went to, 14 robots, groups maximum size 110. So one person would bring that group to the robots, and they're milking about 7.5 cows an hour, 14 robots. So in an hour, those cows are drifted through the robots. Once the cow has been brought to collecting yard, that's that man's job done for an hour, because they're not getting pushed in, which I thought they might be. They are just filtering their way through. So the collecting yard isn't very big. If it's too big, they're going to hang around. So you have to size that properly. The cows will drift through the robots, and it would seem, I think everyone's still learning worldwide on this, but it seems that the cows' motivation for going through the robots is really to get back on the feed fence or to go and lie down. So they just go through. So once that man has brought the cows to the collecting yard, he can then go and do other management jobs during that time, like looking after cubicles, bedding down. And then he has to come back an hour later with the next group. But one thing I should say, just as well, because once they've been milked, the cows actually find their own way back to where they came from with selection gates. So if the person's bringing the next group in, the two groups can actually mix a little bit at the end. It doesn't matter, because they get automatically sorted back to where they came from.
That's something that I know in all the parlor farms that I've worked with over the years before I specialized in robotic milking. One of the things that was a common problem on every farm was cows that ended up in the wrong group. And so that idea that we don't have to worry about wrong group cows anymore sounds pretty appealing to me. So that brings another question up for me that I hadn't thought of. What about handling cows for management tasks? How about a cow to breed or a cow that needs a sink shot or a health exam? Is that done back in the pen, or are those cows also sorted off and held in a separation area for treatment?
Yeah, so that can either be done, can be sorted off into a separate area, locking yokes if there's a job to do for the whole group of cows, or if they might form the high tension group depending on what's going on. So yeah, there's various different ways of managing that, John.
You mentioned the cows just finding their way through the robots, but what does the training look like in a batch milking facility? What does it take to get cows to the point where they just flow through on their own?
If you've got 6 groups, one of those groups will be a high tension group. And the way they seem to be managing it out there is that high tension group is not necessarily sick cows, it's early lactation cows and heifers. And they'll stay in that group for about 10 days. So you get a high tension group. So they then say, right, we only milk these cows twice a day till they get into the system. And we will then have 2 people available twice a day just to bring the high tension group through, because they will need some pushing and some extra looking after. But after 10 days, they then get evenly distributed, or they go into one of the other 5 groups. So in that way, you just identify when you need the extra manpower, and that's it. And the rest of the time, it's basically one man job to bring the cows to the robots.
You talked about one person bringing the cows to the robots, and it would seem to me that no matter how many robots, we've got this group that gets milked in 1 hour, and that one person is bringing the cows to the robots, whether there's 10 robots or 20 robots. So the labor savings gets larger with larger farms. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think it would. So, as you say, we're going to bring, it's an hour's worth of cows. So in the case of 24 robots, that's most really near 200 cows or 180. And in the case of the farm with 14 robots, it was around about 100, 110. And I think one of the farms we went to, he'd been using Eastern European labor, getting more and more challenging, and he is putting 18 robots in, and he then thought, right, I can go back to Danish students, because labor over there was very expensive as well. I was quite surprised. It was 25 euros an hour, which is a lot more in the UK. And he felt he'd go back to students because it would be lighter work, most probably a bit more interesting working with robots. And so that for him was a major incentive for going down this route.
Also along the line of training, and what about feed in the robots? Are there feed systems installed? Are they feeding one or two feeds, or what form of feeds? What does that look like?
The first farm we went to had installed two different feed types. And I think, so this was 2 years ago. I'm not sure that anybody really quite knew how much feed they need to feed to get those cows through the robots, whether that's still about or the farm or anybody else who's involved with batch milking. They quickly found out, they thought they might have to feed 2 or 3 kilos. They quickly found out that they could only needed one feed type, and they'd reduced the feed over a 2-year period to now they're filling it a bit like your no feed guided system, down to 0.3 of a kilo per visit, and nothing within the last 120 days of lactation. I think we could, they said, I think we could confidently just switch the feeders off and be totally TMR. So obviously a saving there as well.
In the US, when we're looking at box milking, and one of the things we measure as far as are the robots full or not would be idle time or free time. And I generally look for 10 to 15%. I've got herds that have pushed below 10 and some that are above 15. Did you get a feel for what the idle time was or do they even measure idle time in those systems?
Yeah, well, look, not really. So what they were telling me was how many hours. So I got all the milking times, and the last time I went to, which was the 24 unit one, they were up to around about 20 hours a day. So I suppose if we think about 10% free time plus wash time, we're in that sort of territory with 20 hours. He's going to push his numbers up, so he will get to at least 21 hours a day milking, which is the same as 10% free time. So that's
Sure.
so this is what I always say to people for batch. You have to view this as the same as voluntary milking. You have to be running these things for that sort of length of time. The first farm was down on that, but again, still pushing numbers up. I think they were already running 18 hours a day. If they can make money at that and they're comfortable with it, so they're 2 hours between every milking. If it stacks up financially, fine. I guess that's more like 15 to 20% free time, isn't it? 15 most probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are most of these running the goal of three time a day milking?
Interesting. It's they all seem to be, because of the high tension groups coming in twice, they're averaging about 2.7.
So the high attention groups were twice a day and the rest of the groups are 3 times a day?
Yes, that was the formula they were all using.
And that fits better, I suppose, with the shift changes to get that extra person on board at that time.
Yeah, so you would do your high attention during the working day, and at night, that night milking, it was just one person. So that's when you don't bring the high attention in. So you end up with a shorter milking time at night, and then you as you say, with your shift pattern, if you've got the manpower available, that's when you throw them at those other two milkings. The other, well, we're just talking about sort of benefits, is its flexibility with the machines as well, which I hadn't really thought about. But if you think about if you're investing in a rotary parlour, once that's in the ground, it's in the concrete, you can't extend it, as we all know. That's it. And as long as you buy something you're happy with for the next 15, 20 years, all hunky-dory. With robots, you've got the option of adding on. If the technology changes after 10 years and they offer you a fantastic deal to trade in and have the latest thing, you can. So that's interesting. And the other one is, if you should get a breakdown, unlike voluntary milking where every robot counts, if you get a breakdown on the phone and the dealer's got to be out there within an hour and a half, with batch milking, you just shut that robot off. And as a result, they're offered slightly more competitive terms for service because they don't need to be on call in the same way.
That's interesting on the breakdowns. You explained it really well on comparing to a voluntary system, but wow, compared to a rotary parlor, when that parlor is down and everything on the whole farm is down, I mean, you may have in a voluntary system, you may have other pens that are still milking if robots are down in one pen, but when that rotary is down, the whole farm is down until that rotary starts running again. And so in the batch milking, to keep going with the other 19 robots when one of 20 is down seems like a pretty big advantage to me.
Yeah, and the second farm we went to, that was one thing that he said, is that was his nightmare, and he knew people who had only maybe 2 robots, and when they're down, it's stressful.
Did you get a feel for how many cows per robot in those batch milking systems?
I was working it out. So the guy with the jerseys, when he gets to his 1400, I think he'd be on about 58 cows per robot with his 24. So it's sort of mid 50s. Is again, it does depend on yield, obviously.
Sure.
So the first farm, 45 kilos, looking to milk 15 kilos per milking around about 7.5 cows an hour. The jerseys milking more like 8.5. So obviously that comes into it. It's a very interesting formula to sort of work out to see what's best for somebody. But I think we will see more and more large herds taking a serious look at this. I think it's taken everybody quite a long time to sort of work out how we can do this. For the large herds, people with rotaries who want to go robotic or thinking about it, it's certainly something they should consider. Yeah.
So to put all of this together, if I'm a dairyman who's thinking about a new milking facility, and I've got a choice between a rotary and a batch milking and a voluntary milking setup, what kind of farmer, who fits best in each basket? What is each best suited for?
Yeah. Okay. Big question there, John. But let's have a go at it. I think for the smaller producer, I'm a big advocate of voluntary. I mean, up to 300-400 cows, voluntary milking, house system, very simple. You know, I wouldn't really look to do anything else. If you're going to go batch milking, we're now into big numbers, 500 plus, where we have to then consider, is it going to be a rotary or are we going to go batch milking? Because that's the clear sort of choice at that level. I think this now comes down to initial capital costs. Well, there's no doubt the batch milking cow for cow is going to be, the equipment's going to be more, but we're going to save on labor. I think really labor and the type of labor is one of the big ones when it comes down to rotary versus batch. And I can see how you can, having seen it for myself, I can see with big numbers how if you offset the labor and some of the other advantages, how it can stack up financially. So yeah, it all keeps it interesting anyway.
Very good. I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Not at all. I learned a lot. It's very interesting, and yeah, there's articles coming up on all the farms as well.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely watch for that.
Yeah,
those will be on your website.
Be on the website, and some of them getting published as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Enjoyed it. Catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Worldwide Robotic Milking Podcast, where Gareth Jones of Robotic Milking Systems and John Gerbitz of Cow Corner Consulting share their insights on robotic milking around the world. Join us again for the next episode, and be sure to like the show where you listen to podcasts.